So this week I'm welcoming Wendy back to Monday Moments, mainly because she has received the most vociferous and voluminous response from everybody and the greatest laughs. I think at my expense somehow, but anyway, it's certainly one of the best Monday Moments ever. And everybody said, bring Wendy back because we love what she says about you. So this week, Wendy and I were just talking briefly about things that have happened to us during lockdown, and it threw us right back to a subject of, doesn't fear make us do really strange things? So Wendy, I'm going to let you choose which stories to pick up on and just share your view on, doesn't fear make us do strange things?
Okay. A little bit of background on how we came to be talking about it was that I've gone back to work in my office, and part of me was really excited to not be at home anymore. Sorry, Dave. Working from home. I missed the interaction with colleagues that I didn't get when I was working at home, and I have a team that I'm responsible for, and though we had lots of Zoomies, as we call them, and everything else, there was that step where it was like, okay, let's go back, sort of thing. And going back has changed. There's lots of protocols where I work that weren't there before, so it's the same but different. So yeah, there was some element of fear. Not all the staff are back in for different reasons. They've got health issues or whatever else, and some of them are fearful of coming back into the work environment. So we understood that. But so then Dave and I started to reminisce about how fears impact our behavior and the things that we do that sometimes are really dumb just because we're frightened. And the first thing I remembered was our youngest daughter, Bryony, and she's done Monday Moments, and she's a very confident young lady. When she was little, she absolutely adored dinosaurs. And we found this place called Groombridge Place, which is just outside of Tunbridge Wells. And in the middle of this pond, everything was like giant size. They put up giant swings and giant this and giant that. And in this lily pond was this giant dinosaur's nest with an egg in it and a broken egg and some footsteps coming out. And Bryony was like super excited to see this dinosaur egg. She would have been, what, maybe 3? Yeah, sort of 3 years old.
Yeah, no.
And so off we go, and we have to walk through this path, and in the trees is a giant nest, and peeking out of the giant nest is the foot of a dinosaur. They did it brilliantly. So of course we're like, oh, Bryony, look, there's a dinosaur egg, it's so exciting. And then I just said, oh, what's that? I think one's coming. This little child took off. She could have been an Olympian. She absolutely sped down this path. There was no one going to catch her at all. And it was this excitement but fear that this dinosaur was coming. And she took off. And she was streets ahead of us. We couldn't catch up with her. She was running hard and fast. And so that was her fear with her excitement, you know, of being where and seeing a dinosaur egg. But when she thought she was actually going to meet one face to face, she took off. Smart cookie. But so that was the first thing we talked about, and how sweet that was, but also how cruel a mother I was, because when we were walking back I did exactly the same thing and she took off again like a greyhound. As I said, she would have won an Olympic medal, I'm sure, if she had been in a race. Usain Bolt would have had a run for his money with that 3-year-old at that time. And so that was the small child's fears. And then we related experience we had in Florida, and we went rafting on this river called the Itchituckney River, and it was cold, but it was quite clear. And Dave, I can't remember why you had to get out of the boat. Do you remember?
I'm not sure, but certainly there were alligators we could hear either side
Yeah.
on the banks.
Yes, when you got in, it was crystal clear and you had no worries. But as you got further and further down the river, the reeds started to come in and everything else. And I think you got out to help Bryony was in a little, again, she was about 3.5. Her big sister was in another raft with her cousin, and she wanted to go and be with the girls. And she was like doggy paddling across to them, and then she looked like she was in trouble. So I think you got out to help her back in the boat. And then Dave started to panic. So he grabbed hold of Bryony, hauled her in the boat, and then he was like panicking, and gripping onto the side, and he's saying, I can't put my feet down. I can't put my feet down. And the flow of the river was such that it was pushing his legs underneath the boat. And let me just say, boat was rubber dinghy. And so he was absolutely getting really, really frightened that he was out of his depth, he couldn't get his feet down, and that he'd be swept under the boat and away. And so he's panicking, and behind him I can see a man walking probably waist deep in water, pushing his wife and family in a raft. And it passes behind our boat, and Dave's still panicking about how deep it is and he can't put his feet down. And then he sees the man in the boat, and I am hysterically laughing. But he realized that his fears had meant that he was panicking, and he forced his feet down, and he stood up, and he was only waist deep as well. So sometimes our fears, and Dave did almost drown as a child, so maybe that was why his fear was so big. But he absolutely, it made it such a big thing that he was experiencing at that time. Very funny for me, I have to say. But so they were the sort of fears that are sometimes there, and they make us do crazy things. Now, we've been in this situation with COVID-19, and I know Dave has shared with a lot of you that both of us have been sick, and it's taken us months and months to get over it. And Dave is about 6 weeks behind me, so he's still going through it, whereas I've been back at work for 3 weeks now. But this has made us fearful. It has made us fearful about going out. It's made us fearful about meeting people. Now, we've had to overcome those fears. I lost my father 6 weeks ago, and I wasn't able to go to the hospital to say goodbye to him because of the COVID restrictions. But we had to overcome our fear to attend his funeral. And Dave was too ill to go, but I had to go, and it was just our family. And so it, you know, we started off like, oh, you know, we're social distancing, we're all from different bubbles, we can't hug each other. But by the conclusion of the funeral service itself, of course, we hugged each other. You know, we'd lost our dad, you know, so our siblings who'd started off with let's social distance, different bubbles and everything else, we had come forward. So getting back to normality, I'm also frightened about that. And the reason that I'm frightened is I like some of the things that we have learned during lockdown.
Yeah.
And I don't want them all to go back. I don't want to go back to some of the things, the crazy work, where you have no time for each other, no time for home, no time for family, because you're so busy darn working. Whereas we've had, you know, in the midst of all of our sickness, Dave and I personally have had a lot of good experiences and closeness that's come through this. You know, yes, we haven't seen our grandchildren as much as we want to, and it's hard when we see them that we're not allowed to hug them, but we respect what their parents are teaching them about social distancing at the moment. And, you know, for a 3-year-old to look you in the eye and go, you know, I don't know what to do, Nana, I can't hug you. You know, and a 5-year-old wanting to jump on granddad's lap and being told, get off, you know, not by granddad, but by mummy and daddy. So it's a bit of a roller coaster. And, you know, I want to really hold on to the things that I've learned that have been really good out of COVID-19 and this enforced stay at home. I want to hold on to those. So my fear is that we'll be so excited to get back to normal that we lose the good that's come along with all of this, and we'll go back to the bad habits that we may have had before this. And so that's a fear that I have. And I know for me, going back to work, I've realized that there were things that I had in my daily life at home, even when I was working at home, that I'm now too tired for because I'm back in the office. And so I need to make some time and space to do those things that are for my personal well-being. I was very lucky. My boss, he said, I want you to dedicate 2 hours a day of your 8 hours a day on personal well-being, those things that strengthen you, your soul, your spirit, your body. And so, you know, there was time to sit and ponder. And for me, it was to read my scriptures. But you know, for other people, it would be a time for, you know, personal reflection and learning, a time for exercise. I mean, at the moment, Dave and I like 2 rice puddings, and the idea of exercising at the moment is far from our thoughts. But when we had that, it gave us breathing space, and that personal well-being, 2 hours in our day, wasn't taking time from each other, but it was, you know, I have a wise boss who said, you know, I know that in all the midst of this, you need to ground yourself because everything is so different. And I miss that 2 hours now that I'm back working a full 8-hour day. And I'm going to go and talk to him, I think, and say, remember that personal well-being time? You know, can we have a little bit of that where, you know, until we're not fully back into normal and we're working strange hours and limited things where I work, that we still have some time allowance for personal well-being. And so I'm going to say, you know what, I'm going to be in on my start time, but I'm going to go home and take those personal well-being because I feel that it's been good for me and it's been good for my team. So not everybody will have the flexibility to do that, and he might turn and say, no, that was when you were at home and everything else. But I have expressed to him that I'm missing that element, you know, from whatever. So in terms of going back out there into the world as such, I want to hold on to all of the precious things that I've discovered about myself as a person, myself as an employee, myself as a partner, myself as a wife and mother and grandmother, and all those things that I've learned during this time, and take the good. So I'm not going to let my fear of COVID-19 stop me doing stuff, but I also am going to allow it to continue to help me be a better person throughout this and hold on to the good things.
Wow.
So that, sorry, I gabbled on there non-stop. I don't think I'm called for a breath.
What about me? What about me? I want to say something.
Oh, can I do a classic day for you? Do you remember last time I talked about the flowers and how I ended up working out that since I paid for the shopping, I was actually buying my own flowers? Another classic Dave, come home from work. He says, I've got you a film. I've got you a film to watch, Wendy. You know, I know you're tired and everything else, and I've ordered you a film to download on
Netflix.
No, Amazon Prime.
Amazon Prime, yeah.
And I was like, that's so thoughtful. Oh, isn't he lovely? And then I realised that the account that he downloads it on is mine, so I've actually paid for my own film again. So this is classic Dave. So I just thought I'd throw that one in there.
Okay. Thank you for another brilliant Monday Moments, this time on all the amazing aspects of fear and what it can drive us to do that's crazy, and what it can drive us to think about that's really meaningful and beautiful. So thank you for that, Wendy. Again, I think this would be one of their favourites, and didn't say a word, which about sums up Monday Moments, isn't it? Thanks, sweetheart.
I'm sorry.
That's
So
okay.
anyway, thank you for inviting me back. I'm sure it'll be months before you do it again.